Sponsored by Black Magic Design, the world's highest quality products for the feature film, post and broadcast industries. blackmagicdesign.com. And by JMR Rentals, jmrny.com.
Property, or that's the English translation, by Brazilian filmmaker Daniel Bandeira. He wrote and directed this feature, and it's essentially a tale of class struggle. It takes place on a farm where indentured servants live on the farm. They live there, they work there, they raise their families there, they do their shopping through their superintendent there. So they're very dependent on this land. This land is their home. And the owners of the farm are planning to sell it and turn it into fancy high-rise hotels. And so the people who work on the farm desperately need to get their affairs in order quickly, get their papers that are held in the safe so that they must continue to work there. They're essentially held hostage on the farm by their working relationship. And so in an effort to free themselves, violence breaks out. It's an interesting tale about the fine line between poverty and desperation. I will say this film isn't entirely that socio-political. However, it does deal with class struggle and caste systems. There's a deep layer of PTSD underneath because the film opens with viral camera footage of an assailant holding a woman hostage in a face-off with police. The police shoot the assailant dead, and you hear the crowd that has been watching this unfold erupt in applause. And it sets that precedent then that the bad guy being punished is good. Then as the film takes off, you realize that the main character, Teresa, played by Malu Gai, is that woman. And she finds herself in a standoff with the farm workers. And what's interesting about the film is that no one begins the film as evil, but no one ends the film as good. It's very bleak. It's very brutal. I think people who like that heavy socio-political message, who like that tension, and who like that bleak brutality in their horror films will really flock to this one. It was technically superior, and I think it's going to get a lot of horror fans talking.
Okay, I got questions. So, wait, you said there's like does this place take place now?
It does take place in the current time. In fact, the vehicle that they're in appears to be... So most of the film takes place, Teresa barricades herself inside an armored SUV that the family has purchased because of their affluence. Her husband, Walter, played by Carlos Amarin, is clearly infatuated with his own wealth and uses it as an armor around him, both metaphysically and literally, in the sense that he buys this armored SUV. So the glass is bulletproof. No one can get in from the outside. She barricades herself inside this Dodge SUV. So it's hyper modern, which is going to open eyes because some people don't know that there's still people living that way in the world we live in right now in 2023 or 2022 when this film actually came out in Brazil.
Yeah, that was like, there are indentured servants now? Like, is that what they're called, or is that just kind of practically what they are?
It's what they are in reality, but not in name.
Okay, so it's a sort of a modern day indentured servitude kind of thing.
In Brazil, yes.
It's probably not something that I would rush out to go see. But do you think this is going to be like a Brazilian submission for the Oscars or to get awards and things like that?
The acting is top notch. The effects, the sound design, and the message. So yes, I could see this being an Oscar contender for its technical achievements, and again for its emotional story and its socio-political undertones. It's Lord of the Flies on a farm with the rich versus the poor. Unfortunately,
it doesn't really sound like a horror film though. Like, would you think it's a horror film?
So I will say the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival does play fast and loose with the horror genre, but the beauty of the horror genre is that there are so many opportunities to tell different stories that would push the limits of what someone sitting down for a drama could take. For someone sitting down for a comedy, would not expect to happen in that film. So then when you go into thrillers, you go into suspense, and you go into these artful deconstructions of civility, you kind of cross into horror territory.
I think a lot of people market their films as horror because there's like such a horror fan base, and they think it's going to mean box office dollars, but I don't know if horror fans would go for something like that, even though it sounds like a really good movie. Like it'll be interesting. I mean, the Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream 6 crowd doesn't sound like that same kind of audience.
I will say the beauty of Property and the beauty of some of the selections in the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival is that not all horror is monsters. Oftentimes the monsters are ourselves. So when you get these home invasion thrillers, these class uprisal thrillers, you cross into that horror territory when really it's like Last House on the Left is just a revenge thriller. But the kills are so intense that it crosses into horror. And again, it's about what your audience is comfortable with.